Hey now, it's Delta City Fox here. It is Monday, September 21st, 2020. Thank you for joining me as I walk through Loyola University Chicago's campus southward into the Edgewater neighborhood here in Chicago, Illinois. The topic today is abortion. So what can we do to lessen abortions in our society today? Here in the United States, if you are faced with an unexpected pregnancy, you have three options. 1, you can keep the baby and raise your child. 2, you can have the baby and put it up for adoption. Or 3, you can abort the fetus. But there's an interesting fourth option that we must explore. What if you could sell the parental rights to your fetus for profit? This is a provocative idea that first came on my radar several years ago when I was in law school. We were studying Richard Posner, who is currently an economist and was a Seventh Circuit federal appellate court judge here in Chicago, Illinois, between 1981 and 2017. In his 1992 book, Sex and Reason, Posner explored the economics of sex, during which he suggested that a woman could sell the parental rights to her fetus for profit. Now, keep in mind that we are talking about the sale of the future parental rights to the fetus. We are not talking about ownership of the baby after it's born. So when you have a baby, the child isn't your slave. You don't own the child. Rather, you own the parental rights to the child. And that's what's for sale, the parental rights. So, how would this idea play out if it were implemented? At least here in the United States, how would it play out? First off, I found in my research that the process of selling the parental rights to your fetus for profit would not be too terribly dissimilar from the current process of adoption, along with the current process of surrogate motherhood, and would actually be a procedural hybrid of the two. So, currently in adoption, while you cannot sell the parental rights to your fetus, you can get paid for the expenses related to the pregnancy as a quid pro quo for giving away the parental rights to your fetus or your child in an adoption. Conversely, in surrogate motherhood, a woman can sell her eggs for profit and can essentially rent out her uterus to carry someone else's fertilized egg to term. So when you combine the two, adoption and surrogate motherhood, the groundwork has already been established for selling the parental rights to your fetus for profit. So you would have to have a third party conduct appropriate vetting of the parties involved in the sale of the parental rights to a fetus. This third-party entity would vet the adopting parents to make sure that they weren't pedophiles, cannibals, or slave traders who would exploit the baby. Likewise, the parents would need to be vetted to make sure that they weren't dysfunctional people who had raised their adopted child in an abusive manner, creating dysfunctional adults who would eventually be unleashed into society for the rest of us to have to deal with. The third-party entity would also have to properly vet the fetus to make sure that all potential health risks were known so that the adopting parents would be comfortable with and prepared for any potential emotional and/or economic burdens that came with raising the child. Currently in our society, whether regarding adoption or regarding surrogate motherhood, this sort of vetting is usually done by an adoption agency along with a family law attorney who also makes sure that the adoption or the surrogacy is properly registered with the state and that all adoption and surrogacy laws are adhered to. So, the logistics and legal processes of selling the parental rights to your fetus for profit are largely already in place when you combine adoption and surrogacy to create a hybrid business model. So, concerning the moral implications of selling the parental rights to your fetus for profit, I have heard concerns that this would make fetuses into a commodity, and many people are uncomfortable with that. I definitely acknowledge this, and it's a valid concern, but my response, quite frankly, would be, who cares? Although this would make fetuses into commodities, it's a better alternative than aborting the fetus. So in 2017, there were approximately 862,000 abortions performed in the United States. Let's say that you could incentivize a mere 2 to 3% of those would-be abortions to instead end in the for-profit sale of the parental rights to the fetus. That would be saving approximately 20,000 fetuses from being aborted every year. So the commoditization of fetuses could be used to save them from being aborted. Keep in mind, of course, that the market of people who would be enticed to sell the parental rights to their fetus for profit would not strictly be made up of those parents who would otherwise abort their fetus. It would also be made up of those parents who would otherwise give the parental rights to their fetus or their child away in an adoption. There are about 135,000 adoptions in the United States every year. 62% of those adoptions occur within 1 month of the birth of the child, which is about 84,000 adoptions. I estimate that 90% of this 84,000 adoptions that took place right after the birth parents or birth mother would be looking to sell the parental rights to her fetus for profit instead of simply giving it away in an adoption, if that option were available to them. So that would drive the monetary compensation down and thus the incentive down for parents or mothers who would otherwise terminate their pregnancy with an abortion to alternatively sell the parental rights to their fetus. However, there would be still a large subsection of the approximately 800,000 to a million abortions that would be siphoned off through the incentivizing of monetary gain that would come along with selling the parental rights to your fetus for profit. I've known several young women who were not ready to be mothers who chose to abort their fetuses after becoming unexpectedly pregnant. And I suspect that most of us have known a woman or a couple who chose to have an abortion following an unexpected pregnancy. So why not effectively bribe these would-be parents or mothers to not abort their fetus and instead sell the parental rights to their fetus for profit? The sale pitch to the parents or the mother could be, we'll pay for the medical expenses plus $5,000, plus $10,000, maybe plus $20,000, whatever the market would bear. So, as a result of the commoditization of the fetus, after it being vetted, if it is deemed to have really great genes, let's say, for example, that the parents of the fetus were Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen, and it had no medical problems, this fetus would likely elicit a higher sale price for its parental rights than would a fetus that is deemed to have not so good genes and potential medical problems. So you would have a bell curve. And at the end of the bell curve, you may have a fetus that has a high probability of having severe health problems and very well may be mentally handicapped. Well, there might not be a big market or any market at all for purchasing the parental rights to this latter mentioned fetus. However, you could have a religious organization or other charity come to the table and tell the mother, don't abort the fetus and we will pay for the medical expenses plus this much money from our charitable donations for you to carry the fetus to term, and our organization will then take over the parental rights to the child after it's born. So, you may be someone who doesn't like abortions at all. In this scenario, where the sale for profit of parental rights to a fetus is a reality, you can directly help to lessen abortions by taking a portion of your salary, let's say 10%. So let's say you earn $40,000 a year. you donate $4,000 to a charity, let's say St. Michael's Protestant Church, for example, and St. Michael's uses the money to bribe mothers not to abort their fetuses, then St. Michael's finds a family for the unwanted child or raises the unwanted child in its own orphanage. I have also heard concerns that selling the parental rights to your fetus for profit will make some women do that as a profession, perpetually getting impregnated only to turn around and sell the parental rights to their fetus. My response to this is that we already have for-profit surrogacy where surrogate mothers may do just that, support themselves financially by effectively renting out their uteruses multiple times. Now, if a woman is comfortable putting herself and her body through the demands of pregnancy, then who cares? It's her body and it should be her prerogative. And it already is her prerogative as a surrogate mother, so why shouldn't it continue to be her prerogative if she wants to sell for profit the parental rights to her own fetus? So to summarize, I am not advocating for the sale of the child or the fetus. Rather, I'm advocating for the sale of its parental rights. And next, the business model for selling the parental rights to your fetus for profit is largely already in place when you combine that of adoption and surrogate motherhood. And I acknowledge concerns that this would turn fetuses into commodities. However, selling the parental rights to your fetus is a viable alternative to aborting the fetus. And that alternative has the potential to prevent tens of thousands of abortions from taking place every year in the United States, and I'm sure elsewhere in the world. So, how do you feel about people having the option to sell the parental rights to their fetus for profit? Do you think that that proposal is viable? Do you think that it's ethical? Or have I missed something? Your consideration is deeply appreciated. I hope that this has been thought-provoking, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye now.